everybody, and welcome. A very warm welcome to you. Monday afternoon, it is Talking Trades at 7 AFL as officially the NAB AFL trade period has opened. 8:30 a.m. In fact, a few trades done fairly early. A big day of news. Cam Luke here, Tom Browne as well. And Tom, before we get to the latest news, got to hit up the biggest news story of the weekend. We thought Talking Trades might be trending. We thought that the news that you broke first on Friday afternoon at Andrew Gaff was looking like he might in fact stay at the Eagles. The very fact we wore similar shirts just went nuts over the weekend, the amount of feedback we got. And I know you're way too professional to wear a T-shirt, so I'll dress down, you stay the way you are, mate, and we'll be fine.
I like the black T-shirt, and I've gone for the North Melbourne colours today. I'm going to defend their trading strategy later, so I've gone the official shirt today.
We'll talk North, get involved, that's 7AFL, hashtag Talking Trades. Before we get to what has already been done, what is making news in your world?
Well, I think the big headlines out of today will be the Jesse Hogan deals, in my view, not black and white. I think Fremantle will definitely play hardball, and I don't think they want Hogan as much as Melbourne want to get rid of Hogan. So I'll have more on that shortly. And then also an intriguing situation this afternoon concerning Dylan Shield. We're waiting with bated breath on his club of choice. I still think Carlton's favourite. I still think Hawthorn's clearly in the race. There's some murmurings about Essendon being in the race. Look, I still think it's Carlton, but this could take all sorts of twists and turns. It's got a bit of a Buddy Franklin feel to it when he went to Sydney instead of the Giants, but I still think it'll be Carlton, but we'll come back to that shortly. That's going to shape so much of trade period. And of course, he's going to have to announce it any minute because they'll have to work on a deal, and it's no secret that Stephen Silvani and the Giants, I don't think, are the best of mates. So there could be a lot in this.
At 7AFL to get involved, hashtag Talking Trades. We have a poll up right now. It's around Jesse Hogan and Stephen Mayne, and particularly towards the D's fans. Who would you prefer in the team next year, Jesse Hogan or Stephen Mayne? Right now, 68% suggesting Jesse Hogan. But before we get to all of your news, what has been confirmed today that, yes, Tom Lynch has become officially a Tiger. That 7-year deal was unmatched, not really unsurprisingly, from the Gold Coast Suns. So he has been trotted out. Press conference only an hour or so ago. Remarkably, less than an hour later, Anthony Miles and Corey Ellis end up at the Gold Coast Suns. And that's not the surprise, but essentially they kind of got him for free. There was a future third rounds that exchanged as well. Not a great deal in there. Lincoln McCarthy.
A little bit of parking money there.
No doubt. Lincoln McCarthy from the Cats has ended up at the Lions for pick 42 and some third round exchanges as well. Geelong then on trade at 42 to the Blues for a mature age ruckman from the Sandful and Nathan Kruger. So that's what has happened. Darcy Moore officially a Pie for another 2 years. And late developing news around the Giants, Rory Lobb has officially requested a trade to the Fremantle Dockers. And Will Setterfield, the guy's only played 2 games, late 2017, a very high draft pick, pick 5 in 2016, coming off an ACL, but he has nominated Blues as his destination as we get into it. We'll start with Dylan Shield, a man and probably the highest profile Giant right now that is up in the air. What's your latest?
Well, we know that Hawthorn, Carlton on the private jet, St Kilda and Essendon in recent weeks have pushed aggressively for Dylan Shield. As of last night and even this afternoon, the clubs involved, I've just spoken to high-level people at all those clubs, do not know his answer. So the question now is whether it's expected that he goes to Carlton or Hawthorn, or whether there's been a bit of a twist. Essendon has been mentioned in dispatches in relation to Dylan Shield today. My information there is they've put together a very good pitch. Obviously, they're an incredible club. Powerhouse. Would tick the fact that he'd play in front of big crowds. Would tick the fact that he's playing for a big club. And obviously, they're a powerhouse, don't get me wrong. But the issue clearly is still money. Essendon will need more money in coming years for guys, well, they're gun players. Guys like Joe Danaher and Merritt as they push from that 500 to 700 bracket up into the 700 to 900 bracket. So I don't think financially Essendon's as competitive as St Kilda or Carlton, but you simply can't discount them. I think he'll nominate Carlton, but there's too much grey area now to guess. We're in a very, very critical part of his decision.
And the interesting thing around this is that Dylan Shield, of course, is under contract still with the Giants for another 12 months. So there is always a possibility, although the Giants are looking to, of course, ease some of that salary cap burden, there's always the chance that he might choose to stay in the west of Sydney. Before we move on from Dylan Shield, you've been around for a while now. They haven't played for 3 weeks. So the future and what Dylan Shield is looking to do in 2019 and beyond, a quote that I'll come back to later about Andrew Gaff. But is this rare for you that we've been here for 3 weeks and we still are not really, from the club's perspective, getting any type of idea?
I think Shield is like Gaff. Not insofar as I think that he'll stay, but insofar as I think he likes to look at all the different options really carefully, assess them, and he's taking his time. So it is a bit unusual because usually we'd see a decision by 5 o'clock on the first day of trade period. But in Shield's case, He's being advised by Robbie DeRazio and Paul Connors. They've got all the options on the table, and they're just being very careful.
All right, we know that Dylan Shield is still uncertain. We know that Rory Lobb is definitely certain where he wants to go. Another Giant who has been in contract. He signed at the end of 2016, still a couple of years to go, but he's nominated Fremantle. And this is the complication here. There's Jesse Hogan from Melbourne, and there's Rory Lobb. But Rory Lobb's made his intentions known a little bit earlier. What's the latest there?
Cam, this goes back to what I said on Friday. I think Fremantle's priority is Rory Lobb. I don't think their main priority, which will come to, is Jesse Hogan. They want Jesse Hogan. I suspect the deal will get done, but they want Lobb. That's their priority. Fremantle with some concerns around the Hogan situation. So Lobb, I think, will eventually get to Fremantle.
All right, so this is what I find a little bit surprising as well, because Jesse Hogan and at 7AFL to get involved, because hashtag Talking Trades, we are asking, and 68% are saying that Jesse Hogan, Melbourne fans are saying they prefer to see Hogan in D's colours rather than Stephen May. Why would you be more interested into Rory Lobb? I'm not saying he's not a great player, but do you think there's something else? Is it the foot, or is there some other external factors that might be a concern for the Dockers for a guy like Jesse Hogan, who is a superstar?
Well, Melbourne's stated position on Hogan this afternoon, to answer you a little bit indirectly, is they think that they know what the deal should look like with respect to Hogan. The question is whether Fremantle's going to give up what Melbourne want. But in relation to your question, I think Fremantle's still concerned about the Hogan situation. Now, when I say situation, there might be a range of factors which they take into account when you recruit a player, and I think they're going through those factors at the moment. There might be medical considerations, for example, with his foot. He's had well-documented challenges in the past and all sorts of issues. That comes with complications as well. So I think Fremantle want to thoroughly assess that situation and won't want to give up a lot for him now, because in theory next year, the year after, Hogan will be just as keen to get back to Fremantle. They might have to give up less.
But you know what happens in 12 months' time. This is what I say, and I get that, and we'll get to Tim Kelly in a moment, because there's always the possibility that you can give up less when he wants to come home, or he finally goes nuts because he's still not in his prime, kicks 75 goals next year, which I believe he's more than capable of doing if he gets a good run at it and his body allows him to. Next thing you know, they're going, well, you know what, you could have had him for pick 5 last year. Now you want 2 firsters and a second rounder just to get him in because he's the common medalist.
Let's cut to the chase. We're in that grey area where it's not abundantly clear why Melbourne seemingly want to move Hogan on. And it's up to them to explain it. We can't speculate. It's unfair to do so. It's up to Melbourne.
A lot of speculation around Tim Kelly, of course. He wants to go home to Western Australia, which has been well documented. He finished second in the best and fairest. But his manager on radio late Friday afternoon almost ruled out Fremantle.
This is funny.
As a possibility. It gives away all his leverage. What's your latest?
I spoke to his manager last night before my cross for 7 News. I said, well, West Coast is going to have difficulty getting this deal done because they're not going to get the gaff compensation. Is Fremantle an option? And he said no. Now, why would he say no? Because obviously Kelly apparently wants to go back to Western Australia. It comes back to that point on Friday. He probably wants success at West Coast. And let's face it, they've offered him a huge amount of money, up to $600,000 times 5 years. And I suspect his manager's pretty keen on the deal. So they want to get to West Coast. And West Coast did say today they're confident of somehow getting it done.
No doubt. You'd rather probably play for West Coast than Fremantle if you were Tim Kelly. But if you were so desperate to go home, which I'm not backtracking and say that he's lying, but there are only 2 clubs there. You don't categorically rule one out if there's only 2 clubs. It'll get done.
We hear argy-bargy during trade period and clubs digging in. Geelong weren't that rapt about missing out of the finals. They were pretty strong even a day later. They're going to review this, review that, look at their coaching strategies and all sorts of things. They might dig in over Kelly. I don't reckon Brian Cook's going to just wear a defeat here. They want a good deal on Tim Kelly.
West Coast Eagles win a premiership, and you're allowed to make mistakes when you do it. It happened yesterday. The link didn't work when the Andrew Gaff confirmation came through. They had Jeremy McGovern's signature on the graphic. These little things happen.
Not as bad as the Carlton Titanic gaff, though, with the 2 captains.
That was interesting. 2019 and beyond is the quote in the West Coast Eagles confirmation. Do you have any idea how long this Andrew Gaff deal in fact is?
I don't know yet, but for him to stay, it'd have to be long term because he's given up on a huge offer from North Melbourne.
All right, and with North Melbourne, because the narrative is today, they keep going and being quite honest about these big fish that they try continuing to land. They haven't been able to get DeGoey or Martin or Gaff or Heaney in the past. What are your thoughts on it?
No, well, there's a couple of aspects to this. They've got Bruce and Hall, so I think overall they've had a fairly successful trade period.
Pollock and Hall.
Pollock and Hall, I'm sorry. Sorry, Pollock and Hall. I think to get a big fish, I think you need to get the first one in place and then ones will follow in terms of a big name. So that hasn't happened. I also think they need probably, and I know all clubs have got good facilities, but I think for North to attract an absolute A-plus gun, they probably need the best facility in Melbourne. And I think they're on track to start to develop that at Arden Street. So I think they're doing all the right things. It will happen. My other point is that you can't get criticised for having a go.
No.
It's a bit like Collingwood being disappointed as a result of losing the grand final. Sure, they're down. That comes with getting to the grand final. So if you actually have a go at these players, put yourself on the line, put yourself out there. They never crowed publicly about these. They did it all behind closed doors, got Graham Allen involved in their trading strategy, did all the right things. They'll eventually get one of these players. Hasn't happened this year. No good criticising a club having a go.
And North Melbourne, when you really look at them, they will get one sooner rather than later, and they weren't trumped by a third party.
No.
All those clubs ended up staying in the original
Kelly
club.
will end up owning the biggest house in Melbourne at this rate.
Allegedly. All right, at 7 AFL to get involved. Any chance the D's retain Hogan and are able to get May at Cobby Co 2?
No, in a word, I think they'll need to get the pick for Hogan to have a good go at getting May. The Hogan deal isn't across the line. I expect it will be done, but until the Hogan deal's done, Collingwood's a sneaky chance on May. Having said that, as a result of re-signing Moore now, having money tied up there, and also they'll re-sign Langdon in the next couple of days, they need to heavily back end a May deal. They might have to pay him 200 grand next year, then 1.8 the following year, because Collingwood, I think, have got a fairly well documented tight cap.
At Phil T asks, are the Hawks still a May chance?
Yes, in a word, not a good May chance, but they're a chance. The Hawks are also a chance for Wingard, depending on the Shield decision. So the Hawks will pivot depending on the way Shield goes.
And Port Adelaide, Chris Davies spoke today and said that Chad Wingard hasn't given any indication that he's in fact not happy at the football club. So that's the continuing confusing situation. Hashtag not armchair experts, hashtag talking trades to get involved. That's 7 AFL. One last thing to leave us with, Tommy?
Yeah, Alex Fasolo hasn't been done in recent days, was subject to a medical, but a good old-fashioned footy story. I think you'll go from Collingwood to Carlton, following Daisy Thomas and Mick Malthouse and a few others in the history of those two clubs. But I think Alex Fasolo will get done. I'm not sure how he'll get a game. I've seen him recently in the VFL, has struggled at times, but hopefully he can forge a role on that side. He's a good guy.
We'll be back this time tomorrow at 7 AFL. Hashtag talking trades.